Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Filmmakers LA Virtual Film Festival. My name is Bojana Sandic. I'm the programming director at New Filmmakers LA, and I'm very excited to welcome all of you here today. For those of you who don't already know us, we're a nonprofit 501c3 organization that provides monthly opportunities like this one to the independent film community and film professionals. I'd first like to start this session before we jump into it by taking a moment to acknowledge that NFMLA seeks actively to provide a safe space within our community for community members of all backgrounds and is inclusive of every race, nationality, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, religion, and ability. Everyone is welcome here, and if you are here with us today, we are happy to have you. I would next like to take a moment to acknowledge our incredible sponsors without whom the work New Filmmakers LA does would not be possible. So starting with our monthly venue host, the South Park Center and its parent company, LBA Realty, Executive Circle sponsors Film LA and Warner Media 150, Producer Circle sponsors BBH and HBO, Director Circle sponsors Sony Pictures Entertainment and Blackmagic Design, Debut sponsors City National Bank, Creative Artists Agency, POV, Easter Seals, Los Feliz Neighborhood Council, UCLA Extension Writers Program, SAG Indie, and Netflix. Our foundation supporters, including the Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce Community Foundation, the LA County Department of Arts and Culture, the California Arts Council, Sundance Institute, and Bank of California, and of course, our media partner, Screen International. And if you haven't taken a moment to review all of this weekend's festival programming, we encourage you to do so. This great lineup is still streaming all the way through tonight, and we have a great feature film later tonight. So I encourage you to take a look at nfmla.org and learn about that and what we have coming up for the next months. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started, just so everybody knows what we're going to do. Today's Q&A is going to kick off with about a 15-minute moderator-led discussion with our filmmakers. Throughout the discussion, we encourage you to use the chat to comment about all the items that are being covered. If you don't have your video on, please turn it on so that we can see you and you can see us and we can all get to know each other face-to-face. Following the moderator-led discussion, we're going to turn it around to you, our audience, for a 15-minute interactive audience and filmmaker Q&A. In order to ask a question during the Q&A, simply use the raise hand feature, which is under the participants tab on your Zoom screen. Clicking that raise hand button is going to place you in queue to ask your question. When it's your turn, a New Filmmakers LA staff member will unmute you. And then you just need to make sure that you've unmuted yourself. And once you have the floor, we ask that you limit yourself to 1 to 2 questions maximum so that we can try to get questions from as many people as possible. And if we have extra time at the end, we'll go through for another round of questions. If you don't have a microphone, you can also chat us your question either into the general chat or you can send it to Andrew Acedo at New Filmmakers LA and he will ask it for you. Also, be sure to mind your video background if you have your video on and whatever's going on in the background audio-wise. If you have your mic unmuted, you know, Zoom rules at this point. If it's happening behind you and your camera's on, we can see it, all that. And then lastly, depending on how many people we have in attendance at the end of the session, we're going to wrap up with NFMLA's Attendee Connect. Since we can't get together to network in person, we hope that these breakout room sessions are going to give our attendees and our filmmakers the opportunity to build new relationships and discover new resources, to expand their ability to create content and to collaborate. Attendee Connect is going to run for 5 minutes each breakout room. We're going to do 2 or 3 at the end, depending on how much time we've got. Each room is going to have about 4 attendees in it, and everybody is going to have 60 seconds to just very quickly do the following. Tell everybody your name, tell them what you do or what you aspire to do, tell everyone 1 resource you can offer and 1 resource that you are seeking. And then you'll all have 60 seconds to exchange information before the room closes and save the chat if you need to. We'll go through that all again at the end for everybody who's staying, but just a heads up that we highly encourage you to stay for that because that is a really fun part of this. So yeah, and with that, I am very excited to introduce our filmmakers. We have such a wonderful group today, so many different types of storytelling styles and so many different stories. And I think we're going to have a really fun discussion. So just to start off, I'm going to go around to everybody just like in the order that you're appearing on my screen. I'm going to ask everybody if you could introduce yourself, tell us which film you're here with and what your role was in it, and tell us a little bit about what inspired the project. So I'm going to start with David.
Hey everyone, so I'm David Labrec. I'm the writer and director of Under Pressure. And so yeah, what inspired me for the film is one of my books, because I read a lot of books in life and I read a lot, and I I've read in the 2017, I think, one of Jean-Claude Michéa books, which is a French intellectual, and yeah, he discussed yeah the actual evolution of the left and all that stuff, and some kind of you know uh, relation with capitalism, and I wanted to make a sort of funny comedy all about that, not pretty serious, but with a serious content. So yeah, that's all about it.
Yeah, and I would say you very much met that goal with this film. We get both the very serious and the very lighthearted. So,
Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you. Nancy?
Hi. Hi. No voice to start. Amazing. I'm Nancy Webb. I'm based in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and I'm the writer-director of the short Becca, which is kind of a queer comedic nod to the Gothic novel Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And I love this novel, so I really wanted to find a way to capture the queer subtext of it without being super heavy-handed and kind of leaving some of the like really fun but like harder to do campy Gothic vibes behind, and do a contemporary twist on that story. So I come from a comedy background, and I had an amazing time making this film. It was my first film that I wrote and directed, and I made it with two amazing comedians and actors, Amelia Hellman and Amanda McQueen, and a cast and crew of all women, shot in under 24 hours. And honestly, we just really had a lot of fun, and I'm really proud of it, and I'm really happy to be here. Thanks.
Oh, thank you for that. I'm surprised to hear that it was shot in only 24 hours. I feel like it feels like so well-rounded and so much more in depth than I would have expected from a 24-hour shoot. That's incredible. Well done. Richard.
Hi there, my name is Richard Pierre. I'm the writer, director, and producer of An Uninvited Guest, which I basically describe as a dinner party in the Twilight Zone by way of racial profiling and police brutality. How did I come up with this film? Basically, I think in 2014, 2015, we watched a series of upsetting videos that kept playing on the 6 o'clock news of Black men being murdered by police. And I remember there was a particular moment in time when I watched one of these videos, and I was sitting at my dining room table, and it just seemed to play on this endless loop. And then this idea just basically hit me, and I think I wrote it in the fever pitch the next day, and then was fortunate enough to get a grant from the Ontario Arts Council. And, many years later, it finally came to life, and now it's at the festival. So I just want to thank the festival for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, and it seems like it's had a really great life on the festival circuit as well. So congratulations on that, and glad that it all finally came together after so many years in kind of this idea and production stage. That's great. Very well done. Polly.
Hey everybody, I'm Polly Pierce. I'm the writer, producer, director of a supernatural dark comedy called Witchcraft. So as people may have seen, basically it's based, oh gosh, I'm getting nervous. I'm finally getting the Zoom jitters. Basically, yeah, it's a supernatural dark comedy about a millennial keyboard warrior who wants to put a hex out on her all too perfect co-worker, but anything that can go wrong does go wrong, and hilarity ensues. The inspiration behind it it. I'm a huge fan of the X-Files. Many of you might have noticed there's that supernatural nod going on and that feel of it. So yeah, and I was actually lucky enough to work on the reboot of that series, and I totally made a couple of smart alecky jokes on set about one of the storylines about a witch and how did she get all the ingredients to make her like safety circle, because we were in the middle of nowhere. It took 45 minutes to get there via like a transpo bus. But yeah, so from that and some smart alecky comments and a lot of people going, hey, that sounds like a good short film, that's where Witchcraft came about. So yeah, I guess it was like a year in the making of writing it, doing several drafts. Our shooting draft was draft 13, lucky 13. And yeah, and now this is it, Witchcraft out in the festival circuit. So yeah, thanks NewFilmmakers for selecting it, being part of your screening series.
Wonderful. We're happy to have you. And also just goes to show that you can totally, out of one well-placed joke, you can spin an entire film. So that's fantastic. Cavan.
Hey everybody, I'm Cavan Campbell. I'm the co-writer and director of Receiver. Receiver is a chamber horror film that follows a Sri Lankan Canadian social worker at a telephone helpline one evening when she is confronted over the phone by an insidious caller with the power to control her mind. This project actually came out of the experiences of my then girlfriend. At the time that Luke Higginson, my co-writer, and I were starting to throw ideas around for this project, my girlfriend at the time, who is a social worker, was working at a telephone helpline. And in having the chance to talk to her about her experiences there, you really got the chance to see the amount of sort of emotional labor and empathy that was kind of demanded of her on both sides of the equation, both by her employers and also by her clients. And the thing is, the more Luke and I started to think about that, the more it kind of started to scare us a little bit, in the sense that, you know, the more you commoditize somebody's empathy that way, and of course, empathy is effectively the bedrock of the modern social work industry, but the more that quality, that very human quality, is commoditized, the more the opening is laid out for abuse. And it seemed a really ripe way of sort of exploring some of the ideas that Luke and I were really concerned about, such as toxic masculinity and you know, how society generally treats women in the workforce. And it seemed a really fruitful way of digging into some of those issues that were really at the forefront of our brains at the time. And it seemed like a pretty creepy way of doing it. So that was the initial inspiration. But I would also like to say, having so much fun at the festival so far. So thank you so much to NewFilmmakers and all the staff.
Thank you, and very happy to have you. And yeah, I would say that you definitely succeeded on that kind of intangible sense of emotional labor being like extracted and preyed upon. I don't think I've ever seen that really in a horror setting, and kind of viscerally in that way. So just, yeah, very well done. Allison.
Hi, I'm also very excited to be here. My name is Allison Richards, and I am the writer-director of Trashed. Trash is about an uptight woman who comes home and finds that her cleaning lady has not only not cleaned her house, but instead got drunk and trashed it. It was inspired by an article I read about a real story in, I think it was Brooklyn, about somebody who'd come home and basically kind of that same setup, except the real story didn't have a good ending. I think she ended up, you know, pressing charges against the woman, and it just sort of seemed really sad. And so I thought that I wanted to kind of retake that story and see if there was a way to maybe take these two, you know, find two women who are seemingly incredibly opposite in character and try to find a way that they could connect. So that was what I was trying to do with Trashed.
Awesome. And yeah, that's a story that doesn't seem like it would have a happy ending, like in either case, on either end of that. But no, it was very interesting to see it come together. Gia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Gia Milani, and I'm the writer and director and producer and editor and narrator of At the Back, which is a short, dark comedy. It's a surrealist comedy about a really disliked dead man and his equally disliked daughter-in-law. I wrote a short story about 10 years ago, and it's based on the short story. It is a personal story. I don't like to talk about that too much, but I will since we're amongst friends. I had a father-in-law who was a total tyrant, and going to his funeral was almost like an out-of-body experience where we had to, I guess, pretend that he was a nice man and things were good, and they weren't. And it was almost like I wasn't there when I was watching everything unfold and people telling stories about somebody who was really an awful, cruel person. But as is my way, I look back and see everything through a lens of humor, and I did it with this as well. I also got an arts grant, an Arts Council grant, and I was thrilled to get that. This is my first short that I'd done in like 12 years or something like that. And it was really nice to kind of get back to doing something that I didn't get notes for because there was no other funder than my Arts Council grant and whatever I wanted to do. So I stuck my nose into kind of everything, which was really fun. I don't know that I would do it again, but it was, you know, I like to stick to my own lane most of the time as a writer director, because that's what I mostly do. But it was fun to kind of do every little bit that I could. And one kind of twist with this is that I didn't want my actors to use a script, so they didn't. So they worked directly from my short story, and the crew got a script, but they didn't, because I really wanted to test how good my directing was after stepping away from it for a time and working with mostly actors who were either very new or hadn't acted at all before. I wanted to see if we could make these characters come to life in my head, that and do it almost on an improvisational level. So yeah, we shot it over 3 days, I think, and they were great and a lot of fun. And yeah, and thank you so much for having us. I know that my actor has been attending a lot of the stuff over the last bit and absolutely loving it. I get text messages saying, this is amazing, everyone's great. So thank you so much for having us.
Oh, you are so welcome, and I'm glad that it's been a good time for you and for your team, and that's really incredible to know that it was all improvised and that it was just you know, take the story and then interpret it as you will. That makes it all the more impressive. That's awesome. So the next question that I really wanted to ask each of you, because we have so many filmmakers and film students in the audience, really wanted to know what the biggest lesson you learned doing this particular project was. And then almost like as an aside, is that something that, you know, you could convert into some sort of actionable advice that you would give somebody else embarking on such a project? Although it may necessarily, you know, it maybe necessarily isn't. It could be something that you've learned about yourself as a creative that you can take forward into your work. But if there is something, you know, every project is a learning experience. And so we would really love to hear about what you learned making this project. And I'm just going to call on people in the order that you're on my screen again. But if we can start with David again.
Yeah, so what I've learned from Under Pressure is, maybe first, I learned that sometimes the tiniest project can be the funniest to do. So yeah, obviously a lot of fun shooting in this public toilet bathroom, excuse me. And yeah, a lot of laughs and all that stuff. And after that, yeah, I also learned that comedy is much more about rhythm, and it may be hard to do sometimes. So you have to keep that in mind when you write your project. How do you will you translate that by the rhythm? You know. And yeah, this one is not really original, but you can have a great story in in just one place. So it's a good exercise, you know. That's, yeah, briefly what's I learned, what I've learned, excuse me, with Under Pressure. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, that sounds great. And yeah, a one location piece can sometimes be so powerful, and you have, you know, so much more control over what you're doing when you're focusing in on just that one place. So no, that's great.
Yeah.
Nancy, what about you?
Yeah, so I would say the most important thing that I learned working on Becca was that it's not necessary to have a torturous experience when you're making a film. And I mean, maybe I'm not in a place to say that as an emerging filmmaker, but I just think it's so important to have like a very supportive and fun environment as much as possible, especially when you're making a comedy. And I think that really helped Amanda and Amelia, who starred in Becca, to feel comfortable doing some improvising. You know, everyone was checking on each other, like, have you eaten? Are you okay? You know, like making sure that everyone was feeling comfortable and safe and, you know, as happy as possible when you're exhausted and trying to finish something. So I think like that I've had experiences that weren't that way, you know, doing in other roles on film sets. So yeah, I would say like really strive to make things with people that you actually like working with and that you have fun with. And there's no need for anyone to, you know, be overly uncomfortable in a way, like especially if you're making something that's supposed to make people laugh and be joyous. Like it's always going to be hard work, but you will get a long way by being supportive of people and empathetic as a director. That's sort of my approach. So we'll see where that goes and how that goes for me, but yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I think that approach is going to take you far. And so much of that tone is set by the director too. So that's, I mean, I think you're kind of in a really good headspace for that. So that's great. And Richard, what about you?
So I consider myself practically a professional short filmmaker at this point. I've made like 20 short films, which I would tell everyone in the universe, never do that if you can control yourself, because why would you want to make so many short films? But I genuinely love making short films. Having said that, the one lesson I think I learned from this experience is, one, they teach you in film school and they tell you when you make a short film, if you're going to make a short film, always have a feature film script ready to go, because if your film does well on the festival circuit, people might reach out and say, hey, is there a longer version of this script, because we might want to option it. So what happened with An Uninvited Guest was that, you know, we won Best Thriller at Holly Shorts. And after that, like there was a little bit of interest in like, is there a bigger version of this short? And anyone I show the short to in the industry is always like, is there a larger version of this? So eventually I did write that script, but I would definitely recommend to everyone in the audience, you've heard this before, I imagine, it's, if you got that killer short, have at least some sort of idea of what the feature is going to look like. And again, for me, An Uninvited Guest, I just could not put it together. I did try before I got on the festival circuit to write a feature, but I just could not find it. But once someone knocks on your door, you'll be able to write that script.
All right. That's okay. So it's very exciting to know that there is potentially a feature-length version of this project coming to us sometime in the future. And two, it's also good to know that even on your 20th short, you can learn something new. So that's, I think both of those things are also good takeaways here. And be sure to let us know at New Filmmakers when you do have the feature version of that. Just, you know.
Definitely.
And Polly, what about you?
My answer is actually similar to Nancy because, yeah, it is all about how you create relationships with people on set and creating like an environment where people feel supported and their ideas welcomed and, you know, and dropping the ego because like I work professionally in the film industry in the camera department and, you know, we see the gamut of like egos and interesting people. Interesting people is my euphemism for, you know, not so interesting, you know, horrible people, but yes, but from watching, you know, people like I've been lucky enough to work with some great directors like Cameron Crowe, and he just sets a really beautiful tone on set. He plays music and, you know, he knows everybody's name. There's no, there, like, you don't feel like, oh my God, that's Academy Award winner Cameron Crowe. He's like, he's just Cameron at the end of the day. And he's at the truck saying, you know, thanks for a great job, like Tom, Dick, and Harry. And that's just really lovely where there's this, like, there's no ego and everyone is level, right? And so I feel like I've tried to take bits of that and put into my own practice as a director and just get to know everybody and value their input. And, you know, we'll try stuff, we'll make mistakes. If we make a mistake, no one's going to get the whip on them. We're going to move on and we'll, you know, we'll progress because you need to make your day at the end of the day. So I guess it's, yeah, creating a respectful, you know, supportive workplace environment is a big key. Like, you know, getting rid of all that toxic BS that used to be the old school film set. That's my big key, to try and create that and carry that forward. So, and I've been lucky that the crew from Witchcraft, which was my first big like indie like short film, they've stayed with me, and we've got a couple projects coming up, and, you know, it's really great. We've got this shorthand going on, and yeah, and then my other little piece of advice is just do it. Like, you know, I had a lot of like people were sort of like, oh, your script's not, you know, amazing. You could tweak this. You still need to do more drafting and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, you know what? I feel really like I got to do it right now. This is my window of opportunity. So I just went and did it. And, you know, we did do a first cut, and I saw I needed to do a couple little extra bits, like little inserty shots to make it work. And but we did it. That's the thing. It's like, you just got to make it. If you've got that story under your wing, get it out, you know, polish it off and just do it.
That's really motivating advice. I think there's probably a lot of people here who have something that's on the back burner, or that's in that idea stage that they just kind of need that final push to be like, okay, I'm going to do it now. And it's also great that you are kind of building your team, and that you're going to collaborate with the people you worked on this project on your next one, and you're building that crew, and, you know, and hopefully, you know, this you know, generation of directors is also gonna, it seems to be working very much in the direction of trying to move away from some of those kind of old school toxic film set tropes, if you will. So that's really cool. Cavan, what about you?
Yeah, so first I gotta say, I basically love what Nancy and Polly both said. I'm a really, really big believer in the idea that, like, it really behooves you as a director, but it's also really necessary to create like a really as joyful a set for your crew and for yourself as you can, and be really supportive of people. However, that's not my lesson from Receiver. Receiver was probably just about the hardest film for me that I've ever made. We spent about 1.5 years trying to get the film financed, and we got turned down by every public and private fund that we were eligible for in North America, and also one in Europe. And eventually it got to the point that I realized if this film was going to get made, I was going to have to pay the money to do it myself. And that was like about 70 grand or so. So it's like, you know, it's scary to remind myself that it was the down payment on a house, but it was important, and it was the only way it was going to get made. So my big lesson, that wasn't a first, but I guess was just a reiteration, is if you're making anything, regardless of its size, regardless of how small you think it is, you kind of have to be ready to fight like fucking hell for it, you know? Like, you've got to be willing to spend 2 years of your blood and sweat, and you've got to love the project that much to do it. And I feel like regardless of how small a project is, if you don't love it enough to fight for it every turn that you can, it's maybe not the right project to make right now, you know? And I certainly don't want to suggest that anybody take a bunker mentality into directing and treat everything like it's the battlefield and like filmmaking is war. but sometimes it can be. And I feel like you kind of have to be ready to just grab the machine gun and charge the nests sometimes, you know?
All right. So dedication, very necessary. No matter what the size of the project is, you have to be totally aligned with it. And ultimately that takes you over a lot of whatever hurdles are going to be placed in your way. So I think that is an important takeaway. Like the right balance between, take the plunge and do it, but then also be aware of what that means. I think between kind of what Polly was saying and what you were saying, like we've got a sweet spot here in terms of kind of taking that dive. Allison, what about you? What was the big lesson?
Sure. I mean, I concur with my colleagues all around so far. I think there's so many things that I'm like, yes, I agree with that. Yes, I agree with that. So I'll try to kind of think of something new to bring to the table here. But I mean, and everything I feel like I say, or I was thinking about saying, then I would contradict it. So I was like, never shoot in your house. And then I'm like, but shoot with what you can. So I think one of the things that for Trashed, I was reading, a friend of mine had given me a book called Like Brothers, which is the Duplass brothers book, which I would recommend if anybody hasn't checked it out. And basically it's, them talking about making movies and just, coming up using their friends and sort of what they had available. And so I was kind of trying to take that approach. So we did shoot in our house and, I roped in a bunch of my industry friends. But then the other big thing that I really got out of this one is the previous short that I had done. I used, it was with kids and they were non-union and they were amazing, but it was such a challenging shoot because it was set at a birthday party and it was just pandemonium. And on this one, I got to work with incredibly seasoned and talented union actors, and just working with these two amazing women and how amazing they were to direct and how responsive and how smart and their thoughtful notes. And I feel like I've always been a big fan of talent and like of actors and actresses, but it was just working with people that they were just so amazing. And I feel like I got really lucky in that. And so just, having a great cast, I think is really something that I got out of this one.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And yeah, they kind of really had a good chemistry with each other too. And that felt like it worked really, really well. And so a lot of work with people who you creatively get along with, I think is kind of seems to be a takeaway across the board from a lot of folks here today. Gia, what about you?
I don't know if I walked away with like a lesson. I loved what I was doing so much. I mean, I made a giant shoe in the room that's behind me right here, like a 7-foot shoe, and had like so much fun doing it. And like, it was ridiculous. I mean, it wasn't a good looking shoe. It didn't, some people might miss it. It was like a shoe coffin that went, rolling down the middle. And I don't know, I really liked doing all the hands-on stuff. But I do have like some great advice that was given to me as a director before, because I've made a feature before, and then shorts before that. But there was my cousin's a grip, and I was feeling on I think it was back in 2008 or something like that, and I was making a short film and struggling a little bit with trying to convey what I wanted. Because I didn't know, and I still don't, enough about cinematography. And I was struggling a little bit with talking to that team and being able to say what I wanted. And he hauled me aside and was like, because he does it, he just goes from set to set to set. He's very seasoned. And he said, look, you just have to remember that a director on a set is the least experienced person here, because you are going to be working on something for years and everyone else is going from job to job to job to job, and you are singularly focused on this one thing. And that made me feel so much better, and so much better to be able to rely on everybody around me, knowing that they have so much experience and that you don't need to know everything. So while you may know your story and you may need, know what you want it to look like in the end, you do have to, you know, end up with a shorthand with people and stuff as you get to know them, but you can really rely on your crew. And rely on the other creatives that are around you. And that served me with this short, even though the people that I was working with, like nobody was professional, like on this at all. And we had a ball, and I relied on them too. And it was great because everybody's got something to bring. But yeah, that was the best advice that was ever given to me, is that, you know, as a director, you're probably the least experienced. Mm-hmm.
That's good advice, and thank you for sharing it with us. I think we've all taken something away from that. And with that, Andrew, do we have any audience questions? Are we ready for those?
We are, but no one has their hand raised. Oh, Lauren, there we go. Lauren came in
the draw, Lauren.
Clutch. Lauren. All right. So Sandra. Wow, wow. They're just, look at that. Look at that.
All right.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for those great questions, Bojana. Thanks to the filmmakers for your thoughtful answers and great advice. All right, first up, let's see, Lauren. So Lauren, I'm asking to unmute you.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. I had a question about Becca, because it's so interesting to see all of these different interpretations of such classic stories, from like West Side Story to Clueless to 10 Things I Hate About You, right? So can you tell me a little bit about your process of just going from Rebecca to Becca, and what that pulling of inspiration kind of looked like for you?
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Hi. So after I read Becca, I really wanted to distill one feeling from it. So it wasn't like a sort of like one-to-one interpretation where I just wanted to make it contemporary. I just really wanted to translate like one very, very specific sentiment, which was the feeling of being haunted by an ex or a new lover's ex, you know, like the traces and the material traces of things. So that started getting my imagination going, thinking about, like in Rebecca, I was really drawn to the way that materials served as like kind of like a stand-in for a person, and how that can actually be more powerful than seeing a photo or even meeting that person. So I was really inspired by like the idea of, you know, the swooping handwriting in the book, and the way that you sort of fill in all of these blanks, and you start to really almost idolize or like fetishize someone that you will never meet, you know, like if you're dating someone new and you see something of their exes. So it was truly just, I had experienced that in my life. Some of the other, you know, people who are working on the film had experienced that. We had conversations about it. We started talking about like our relationships and things that were happening in our lives. And that's really how Becca came about, was by pulling out this like one kind of like feeling, this one sentiment, and then putting it in this kind of contemporary setting.
Awesome. All right, next is Sandra. It's a question in chat. Let's see. My question is for all filmmakers. When and how did you know your script was ready, and what was the process like getting it there? It's for all filmmakers. You could just unmute yourselves and go. How do you know your script's ready?
I mean, I'll start if I'm not being a jerk by jumping in. So for us, we knew it was ready because there was an earlier version of the short film script that we did that was about twice as long, that we really liked. But I kind of said when we finished it, there's no way in hell I can direct a script that's 23 pages long for a short. It's just not going to happen. So I basically pulled my my reverse card on the process and told Luke, like, we've just got to cut it down, and I want this to be no more than like 10 pages if this is going to get made. And so we spent about another 4 months cutting it down and restructuring some things and changing a bunch of the visual cues that were in there. And the rule we came up with was, when we felt it was as strong from a narrative and character standpoint as the earlier version of the script was, then it was ready to go. So yeah, it took us about another 4 or 5 months, I think, for us to come to a consistent agreement that we had hit that spot. And then I started looking for money for it.
I'll jump in and answer as well. For Witchcraft, like I said in my little intro, I went through 13 drafts before I got to the shooting draft. So for me, I guess, like, yeah, I feel like that's excessive, but I guess that's what happens. Because what I found was, I guess I got up to like a 6th or a 7th draft before I handed it over to the actors, and the actors, they've all got like musical theater backgrounds and improv backgrounds. So I got them to, we workshopped it basically. And especially Jennifer Pilak, who plays Amanda, the lead, she, like, with her musical theater background, her improv and stuff, she was sort of like feeling the flow, and because it so is on her shoulders, right? So there were things I was watching that she was doing where I was like, oh, I've got to incorporate that in Amanda. So because I feel like Amanda's like my alter ego, like she's all like the darker side. Like a lot of people are like, oh, you're so, you know, bright and cheerful, but I feel like Amanda, she has that real sinister sort of, you know, part in her, and that she puts out there. I feel like there's that seed of her in me. And then I also, but watching Jen go through and workshop it and put it on its feet, I was like, oh, I can put that in there. And then so Amanda's like this combo of me and Jen. So, but yeah, basically, essentially, because it is comedy, it was just getting it on its feet and then observing and then putting it in there and then just feeling the jokes like either fall flat or, you know, just shape up. So that's basically, yeah, what I found with Witchcraft. So yeah.
Great. Anyone else want to add to that? When you know, yeah, go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, I would say kind of similarly. I sort of wrote it and revised it until I was happy with it, and as soon as I was happy with it, I started sending it to sort of trusted friends, and then would get their feedback, and, you know, kind of whatever the consistent feedback is, or the stuff that I agreed with, and then sort of just, you know, kind of tried to just keep shaping it until I felt like it was in the right place, but also really looking to get outside perspective on it too. And then like Polly, once it was cast, sort of worked with them to sort of shape it and the characters to sort of fit it as it moved forward.
Great. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, my script is a little weird. I hadn't really done like a thriller genre before, and I felt like it was less of it was a different film than I'd ever made before. But I think as soon as I wrote the first draft, I felt like it was pretty much ready to shoot, which isn't a common reaction that I generally have. I certainly rewrote it a few times, but it never really changed a lot from the first draft. I mean, I think as soon as I figured out what the ending was, I knew I had a story, at least that I was excited about. So it was just really a matter of trying to find the money to make it. And if I didn't find the money to make it, then funding it myself. So I think it's one of those things. Sometimes you just know in your gut when a script is ready, and sometimes it never is ready, and that's fine too. You just throw it in the drawer and start something new.
Great. Anyone else want to add something? All right. Next up, Ara. Ara, I'm going to ask to unmute you.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to ask Gia a question about your film. I thought it was so much fun to watch. So great, so entertaining, so witty, but so respectful of like the characters' feelings and what they were going through. I was curious how it was like hitting all those like comedic points and taking that from the script to the final cut. Do you feel like that was a lot of that was more in the rehearsal process or editing process, just to get those comedic points down and come across on the screen?
I think it was everything. There was comedy on the page. Now, the original short story wasn't comedic. The short story was quite dark. I think that I wrote it kind of as a catharsis kind of thing. And but when I wrote the script, I mean, I was looking back like a decade later and just thinking how funny and absurd a lot of the things were. so there was that, and I had the cast over, and they were all pretty funny people, so they, you know, elevated it. And I think a lot of it was in the editing and the narration. I didn't write the narration till it was finished. So, and most of it just is like reading like some of the short story, but I don't know. I think it was a combination of everything. I mean, I spent a very hot summer in a sound booth, re-recording the narration till I felt like it hit what I wanted. Because if it didn't, I felt like it could be really sad. But no, I think it was a combination of everything, and the props, which was really fun. my teeth shoes. I don't know. I'm not sure if that answers your question. I think it was a combination of everything. Yeah.
Great. All right, next up, Olaf. Olaf, I'm asking to unmute you.
Yes, hi. First of all, thank you to everyone. I cannot tell you how refreshing it is to be immersed in like truly great dramatic art. I was like impressed and surprised. So my first question is for Richard, about uninvited guests, only because we started talking, the conversation shifted to the idea of a more a feature version of it. Do you think that the kind of urgency of the short format will be a challenge to bring to a feature format? Because I feel the short format kind of took my breath away, that, oh my, it's over, and here we are left with the aftermath. So I'm just kind of curious about that. And my other question is for everyone, what is your ideal relationship with casting? You know, are you involved in casting? Do you choose to just kind of give it over to someone to kind of put the puzzle together? Yeah, thank you.
Great question. Okay, so yeah, I mean, for me as a short filmmaker, I feel like I told my story in 3 minutes. I don't know how I managed to cram it all in there, but that was where I had a lot of trouble, like trying to figure out like, what does this look like in an 80-minute movie, and do you need to suffer through 80 minutes of this movie? That is a tough question to, I guess, work my head around. It's a film that makes me very uncomfortable. Like, even though it's 3 minutes long, like, it was challenging every step of the way. Like, I know when I wrote it initially, you know, I loved it, and it also made me very uncomfortable. And every step of the process, I did not want to make the film. So trying to imagine a longer version and trying to figure out if you're really doing anything substantively more urgent, as you point out, I don't know. But at a certain point, I think that may be up to producers to help you figure out whether there needs to be this longer version of the film, or if that 3 minutes has already done its work. And as far as your casting question, I generally have been hands-on for casting. Like, I'm physically the person like looking at headshots and like making a list. With an uninvited guest, I was lucky. I actually had the grant, so I actually paid a casting director to like give me some people to look at, as opposed to me like culling through a billion headshots. So that was definitely a better experience for me. And I would always work with a casting director and let them do their thing, because they're good at it.
Great. Anyone else want to tackle the casting question? Any of the filmmakers? Go ahead, Gia.
I've worked with a few casting directors, and then just with agents, like going directly to agents. And I've found that if you go to a bigger casting director, it takes a lot longer if you're sending something out, if you're sending something to a bigger, like, you know, well-known person. I was surprised to learn that it would take months to cast. It wouldn't be as quick even if you have a casting director or whatever. They're so busy. Everybody's so busy. You can't get anybody quickly. That surprised me. And I found that going directly to agents was quicker. then I don't know why, writing, personal notes and things like that. But when I cast, I've done everything from like casting at 2 a.m. on a little tiny iPhone because, you have to cast some kid for the next morning and you're running around in between shots. I've done that. And then also, would have people come in. But if you're an actor here, my advice to you when you walk in a room, they're casting you from the second you walk in. I'm casting you from the second you walk in the door. I've cast actors because I knew they were going to be really fun to work with. I usually assume that if you have an agent and you're coming in, then you know your job and you know what you're doing. And it's sometimes less of, do I think that they can nail this part, instead of, because I am also like others here, I have the Olivia Wilde no assholes on set policy. And if you walk in and you seem like you're going to be fun and easy to work with, then I'll probably cast you from that. So
Great. Anyone else one more person, another filmmaker? If anyone, yeah, go ahead, Cavan.
Yeah, I just kind of like to echo what Gia just said. Yeah, like we didn't work with a casting director on Receiver, and we chose to go that route because it would be faster. And I've worked with some really great casting directors, but my co-producers and I basically took that on, and it meant we got to turn around casting really, really fast, and we got to be really hands-on with it. Especially in the case of Receiver, because we were going very specifically for a South Asian actress, because the character was written to be Sri Lankan Canadian. I was really adamant that we wanted to look in as many corners as we possibly could and try and find as much talent that maybe it hasn't been recognized as possible. And it really, honestly, for the speed we were trying to work on Receiver, really helped us not to go with a casting director. But the other thing I want to mention super quickly is just, I don't think I cast like a lot of other people do. Apparently I don't. I've been told this by actors before, because I really sit there in the casting room, not evaluating people on can they do this performance that I'm thinking about in my head already about like who's Sriani. I'm trying my damnedest not to hold that up and just compare everybody who comes in to this like phantom version of the character that I've got in my head. So typically what I end up doing is I throw a lot of really hard notes at actors in the room because I want to see what their instrument is like. I want to see how imaginative they are thinking on their feet, and just how well we kind of share the same language about being able to talk about characters and being able to talk about emotions and intentionality. And so sometimes I purposely throw out notes that are designed to be challenging just because I want to see what somebody's going to do with a bit of a tougher note. And that's always kind of worked for me. And basically everybody I think I've ever cast in any of my recent films, they've never in the room been giving me the performance that they would give me in the end, but they showed that they were really inventive, and that's what I want to cast, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thanks for your question, Olaf. That was great. Cavan, looks like we're staying on you. You have your hand up. You want to ask a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, so Gia, this is a question for you. I thought the visual style of At the Back was really, really arresting. And I need to know, like, was it conceptualized from the beginning, especially knowing that you were working from a pre-existing piece of writing? Was it conceptualized from the beginning to be almost like exclusively in this unnamed character's point of view? Or is there like an earlier planned version of the film that was intended to be shot more, for lack of a better way of putting it, conventionally?
No, it was always going to be from her POV. The very first thing that I did was draw a storyboard, and it was looking, it was like there was a video through the back of her head. Because if I knew how to do it, we would have gone through her head better than, a little eye thing I think that I did in Da Vinci. But no, it was always supposed to be from her POV, and always supposed to be kind of heavily visual with shoes. No, it was definitely planned way before. I think that I did the storyboards even before I wrote one thing for the crew or anything else. I knew that I wanted it to be from somebody's eyes. I almost wish that it could have, I don't know, been almost an installation piece where you could walk through like a VR piece or something like that and really see it from her point of view. I think I would have liked to do that too.
Cool, awesome. It works really, really well.
Thank you.
Great. Looks like we have time for one more audience question, and that's going to Alexandra, visual aesthetic. So I'm going to ask to unmute you right now, Alexandra. Alexandra, are you there? Uh-oh. Alexandra, we can't hear you. It says you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. All right, so Alexandra, if you mind just throwing it in the chats, perhaps we can answer it that way. Oh, there you go. There we go. I'm wondering if anyone has advice to submitting shorts to film festivals, whether to be selective and pick a few festivals, or use a more throw everything out and see what sticks kind of technique. That's a good question, actually. Those festival fees add up. Let's just say that. So we'll take like 2 or 3 filmmakers. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, I've submitted to a ton of film festivals, and I say you always have to have a strategy of some sort, even if it changes while you're submitting. Because again, like Andrew just said, like you can spend more money on festivals than you did on your film quite easily. So find out what your niche is and target it. So like if you're a Black filmmaker, target Black film festivals. And if you get like outlying film festivals that like your work, then that's great. Like if you want to submit to Sundance, by all means, submit to Sundance, but Sundance isn't necessarily going to be the spotlight you need. So try to be selective, try to be realistic, see if you can get some outside advice even from like other industry pros who might be able to say, where do they see your film fitting in?
Go ahead, I'll send to Nancy.
Yeah, I would agree with what Richard said. And the other thing I would add is that try not to take rejection from festivals too personally, because like Richard just mentioned Sundance. I think the chances of getting into Sundance is like 0.0002% or something, ridiculous. And so I remember someone once told me that it's, about a 10% chance generally. So if you want to get into a festival, apply to 10. And again, it doesn't have to be super expensive. You can be pretty targeted. And most of the festival submission sites like Film Freeway, you can also sort of, look at ones that are, under $10 or, so you could apply to several that aren't on the expensive side. But yeah, I would agree with what Richard said is try to be targeted about where you're sending them. But again, don't get discouraged if you get 5 rejections right off the top. It doesn't mean that you have a bad film. It just means that it's really competitive out there. And just I would say just be try to get it out to a lot, because you've probably made something that is worth people seeing.
Awesome. Go ahead, Nancy. Do you want to add anything still? Right.
Yeah, super quick. This is just like a very practical piece of advice. It may be very obvious for everyone here, but as an emerging filmmaker, I'm all about just the most obvious basic advice. A friend recommended that I get Film Freeway Gold for a short amount of time, because then you pay less for all of the film festivals that you're applying for, and you can you can cancel the membership anytime. So if you're going to do like a big batch of applications, then it's definitely worth saving a little bit of money and getting that membership.
That's great. Whatever your strategy is though, Alexandra, NewFilmmakers LA better be a part of it. Let's just say that. NFMLA should be a part of your festival strategy.
Oh, right. Can I say one more thing about festivals too? That which ties into this festival, is that if you find a festival that likes and supports your work, then reapply. And I say that for this film festival because I had such a great time with my last short film, which played here. And it was so great. It was such a great experience. And when I was looking at my festival strategy, it was like absolutely part of it because it was such a good experience.
Thanks, Allison. Thank you. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for these audience questions. Thanks for all your questions, y'all. They're always really, really good. I'm gonna throw it to Bojana. Bojana, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. And thank you to all of our filmmakers for coming out and talking to us and having this wonderful discussion. It was such a pleasure to have all of you here. And thank you to everybody in the audience, especially those of you who asked questions. Thank you for participating and driving this discussion. And we invite all of you to join us again at 7:30 p.m. Pacific for our final Filmmaker Q&A of this weekend, which is with director Tracy Deer discussing her incredible debut feature film, Beams. So be sure to stick around for that or to come back for that. And check out our website for what we have going on next month and beyond. We're here every month at nfmla.org. And now for those of us who are going to stick around and do Attendee Connect, this is your moment to dip out. If you're not going to do it, I'll give you like 1, 2, 3. Okay.
That number stayed the same, Bojana. Wow.
Woo! Okay, cool. So for everybody who wants to join in, we're gonna do 2 rooms, and you're gonna be in each room for a total of 5 minutes, and there'll be 4 people in there. And so the goal when you get in there is you take 60 seconds and you introduce everybody, you give them your name, what you do or what you aspire to do, 1 resource you can offer, and 1 resource that you are seeking. And then you're going to have 60 seconds before the room closes, and you'll get a little warning where you can exchange information in the chat and download that chat if you need to grab everybody's information. And so we're going to do a couple of rounds of this. It's going to be really fun. And so, yeah, I think with that, Andrew, are you going to do the magical sorting into the rooms?
I am right
Time?
now.
Okay.
After I do this right here.